Lord Mandelson has resigned his membership from the Labour Party. That coming into us now. There is no further lines on that. Lord Mandelson said he's resigned from his membership. He doesn't wish to cause further embarrassment over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. James, your thoughts?
It was going to be an inevitability. You know, Labour likes to style itself as a party of equality. Obviously, there'll be a number of very vocal campaigners tonight, I'm sure, privately have called Downing Street staff. You think about the sort of great work that Labour have done campaigning on the issues around women's violence, etc. This was always going to happen. The question is, was it going to be in time for tomorrow's papers? And it hasn't in this case, but it saves him a bit of embarrassment and Keir Starmer and the government tomorrow, I'd say.
Sophia, do you think this is of his own volition or has he been pushed?
You presume someone with the experience that he has to probably act on an element of his own expertise. But that being said, Kemi Badenoch, as we heard just now, had actually called for Keir Starmer to be responsible for him going, rather than his own resignation. So the resignation's come first, hasn't it?
Yeah, gets rid of the responsibility for Keir Starmer and makes it a little bit easier this week, I'd say.
Yeah, OK. Well, let's hear now from John Craig, who's back with us. John, the resignation has come in too late for the newspapers, but certainly this is going to be the big story tomorrow.
Well, for the first edition, certainly there'll be a lot of changing up, as it's known in the trade, for the later editions. Lord Mandelson has told the Press Association news agency that he doesn't want to cause further embarrassment to the Labour Party. So he's seen the writing on the wall, really. The latest revelations are absolutely damning. There are the payments to his then partner, now husband, Ronaldo da Silva, quite big sums of money, thousands of dollars on more than one occasion. Also, the very damaging accusation, which he appears to be challenging, calling for further what he calls fact checks, that he tried to influence the Labour government of Gordon Brown and the Chancellor Alistair Darling about policy on taxing bank bonuses. Now, he says that, of course, I talk to ministers all the time. He was business secretary, he was deputy prime minister, but he was clearly, it appears, according to the latest revelations, trying to help both not just Epstein but his associates in changing policy on bankers' bonuses, which, of course, was a hotly contentious issue at the time. So we now know that Lord Mandelson, under huge pressure, is going for resigning from the Labour Party. Now, his position in the House of Lords is slightly more complicated because he, of course, is on leave of absence at the moment. He's not taking the Labour whip in the Lords. And the Telegraph is reporting that he's not going to go back to the House of Lords, but he probably would keep his peerage, still be allowed to call himself Lord Mandelson. Now, if you look at various people who've retired from the House of Lords and those who've been caught in various types of scandal, Jeffrey Archer, for example, went to prison for perjury. He has retired from the Lords, but he still calls himself Lord Archer, and that's perfectly acceptable, just like anybody else who's retired from the Lords. So this really is shall we say, the final fall from grace for Lord Mandelson. Let's not forget, Lord Mandelson was one of the architects of New Labour with Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. He became the chief spin doctor to Neil Kinnock back in the 80s. He earned the nickname back then, the Prince of Darkness. Then he became MP for Hartlepool, and then he became a minister in the Blair government, forced to resign twice. And then, of course, he bounced back unexpectedly after a spell in Brussels, senior positions under Gordon Brown. Then, of course, the current Prime Minister took this massively controversial decision to appoint him ambassador to the United States, despite the risks, despite the warnings, despite the fact he'd had to resign from government twice. and despite the fact it was known that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He has paid the price, many will say deservedly so, and really these latest revelations or accusations, he would say, about, first of all, the money paid to his partner, husband, and also that he tried to influence government policy. He's clearly seen the writing on the wall, and he's resigned, as he says, so to avoid causing the Labour Party any further embarrassment. And my goodness, he's caused the Labour Party a mighty lot of embarrassment already, and particularly over the last few months.
John, thank you for the moment. Well, just a little bit more detail on that resignation of Lord Peter Mandelson. Says he resigned his membership from the Labour Party to avoid causing it further embarrassment following further revelations about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. In a statement, he said he'd written this evening to the General Secretary of the Labour Party, Holly Ridley. His letter said, "I have been further linked this weekend to the understandable furore surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, and I feel regretful and sorrow about this. Allegations which I believe to be false, that he made financial payments to me 20 years ago and of which I have no record or recollection, need investigating by me. While doing this, I do not wish to cause further embarrassment to the Labour Party, and I am therefore stepping down from membership of the party. I want to take this opportunity to repeat my apology to the women and girls whose voices should have been heard long before now. I have dedicated my life to the values and success of the Labour Party, and in taking my decision, I believe I'm acting in its best interests." So that's the full statement from Lord Peter Mandelson. James, your reaction?
Well, look, he's talking tonight about his contribution to the Labour Party, long-term membership. One for the future historians will be, did Peter Mandelson take or get more from the Labour Party? And it's interesting, I think, talk about the relationship with Epstein and those poor women. Lord Mandelson has previously talked about the fact that, for instance, he was a gay man, didn't notice what was going on, if there was anything going on at the time he was there, for instance. But I would make the point about finance as well, and this is really interesting. Of course, he was an MP in 2003. That's when these documents have come out, which appear to suggest a $75,000. Was that properly declared in the registered member's interest? It doesn't look to have been, according to these reports. And the second point, of course, was that he was the business secretary in a government in 2009. Again, purely about money and lobbying and access. And so I think there'll be a lot of MPs who are watching this in the Labour Party thinking, yes, Peter Mandelson gave a lot, but also took a lot from a party that's supposedly set up to champion the working man.
And are there still questions for Sir Keir Starmer tonight, Severe?
I'm deeply fascinated by what your colleague described about how even though Lord Mandelson can retire and peel away from the Lords sort of as much as seems physically possible, he's still a Lord. It seems hard to drop the term, and I don't know if Sir Keir Starmer could do anything about that.
Well, there's precedent set, isn't there? Because we were talking about Jeffrey Archer, who's still Lord Archer and has been convicted of a crime. Let's bring John back in. John, the information sinking in now. You've had a little bit of time. What else are you learning?
Well, I've had a chance now, Gillian, to have a look at this letter. It's clearly the events of the last 24 hours or so that have pushed him over the edge and made him quit. He says, he talks about being linked this weekend, talks about an understandable furore surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. I feel regretful and sorry. Now, he does continue to say allegations which I believe to be false about financial payments 20 years ago, which I have no record or recollection, need investigating. So that he's repeating what he said earlier when Sky News and others reported what was in those documents about money paid to Ronaldo da Silva, his then partner back in 2003-04. They were married in 2023. So he's saying the allegations he believes to be false, no record or recollection. Now, he says while doing this, investigating those allegations, he says he doesn't wish to cause further embarrassment to the party. I'm therefore stepping down from membership of the party. And then he says he wants to repeat his apology to the women and girls whose voices should have been heard long before now. Now, it's worth pointing out, he gave a television interview earlier this month, in which he failed to apologise and was roundly criticised for that. And it was a day or two later that he actually issued an apology, although not in a television interview. And he finally says in that letter, talks about how dedicating his life to the values of and success of the Labour Party. Taking my decision, I believe I'm acting in its best interest. It's worth perhaps pointing out, one for the historians, he was born into the Labour Party, grandson of Herbert Morrison, one of the giants of the Attlee government. And of course, he did, as I was mentioning earlier, become a key architect of New Labour. First, he worked for Neil Kinnock. Then he very much attached himself to Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. When the death of John Smith in 1994, he backed Tony Blair and became one of Tony Blair's closest allies for many, many years. And of course, was appointed to various government jobs, but was embroiled in scandal then. He had to resign twice from the cabinet. Once over a bank loan from Geoffrey Robinson, an ally of Gordon Brown. He lent him something like £373,000 for a mortgage. He didn't tell his building society about that. That was against the rules. He quit as the first job from the cabinet, came back, had to quit again over his links to a visa application from an Indian businessman. And then, of course, he went off to Brussels, came back in a surprise appointment by Gordon Brown. I mean, it really is. I mentioned Jeffrey Archer. I mean, the story of Peter Mandelson, I suppose if Jeffrey Archer had written it in a novel, people would have said, oh, it's a bit far-fetched, because it really has been a roller coaster career, and it has ended in ignominy, in disgrace. And he denies some of these allegations, but the fact is he has taken the decision to resign from the party because there will be plenty of people who will want him to be kicked out of the Labour Party. And there are opposition MPs, particularly the Scottish Nationalists, saying he should be stripped of that peerage. As for whether he keeps his title, Lord Mandelson, I think I'm right in saying that even if you retire or resign from the House of Lords, I think you are still entitled to call yourself a Lord or a Baroness. That is unclear. But clearly his time in the Lords is over. His time in British politics is over. He's in disgrace. He still faces the possibility of having to go and testify to that congressional committee, as does Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. So you could say that Lord Mandelson's disgrace is complete. And of course, it's always possible there could be more allegations in more Epstein files. But the ones this weekend have clearly pushed him over the edge, and he has quit from the Labour Party.